Hispanic Americans are one of the fastest growing voter groups in the country, and new data shows more Hispanic voters are supporting Republicans. It's an alarming shift for Democrats, who have long relied on their backing. According to a Wall Street Journal poll, Hispanic voters were evenly divided when asked who they would vote for if former President Trump went up against President Biden in the 2024 election. In 2020, President Biden won 63% of Hispanic votes. Chuck Rocha is with me now. He is the president of the political consulting firm Solidarity Strategies. Chuck, welcome. Thanks very much for joining us. So what's your take on this Wall Street Journal poll? Why do you suspect former President Trump may have a greater appeal in a hypothetical 2024 matchup with President Biden than he did in 2020?
Well, he has a lot of name ID. And there's a lot of folks who know exactly who he is. Unlike a lot of Republicans who run for office, they don't always know immediately this early who the candidate would be or have a relatability. That's one thing. The second thing is the average age of a Latino voter in America is just 27. So Latinos are coming of age much quicker than the average population. So what that means is there's lots of young Latinos who don't know Democrat or Republican, but they know of Donald Trump. They may have seen him on TV. They knew he was the president. And Democrats, one of the faults that we have been doing is that we've been spending a lot of time talking to older Latinos who are prime voters, who always show up and historically vote for us at 60, 70, and in some states, 80% for Democrats. But as these Latinos have come of age and gotten older, because we haven't spent enough time talking to Latinos when they're young, they're starting to act more and more like young people as a whole and split their vote either way. That's why you see a shift, not dramatically, but little by little, going towards Republicans, because Republicans smartly have started spending money that they used to not spend at all in bilingual communication, talking to our community.
Well, another Wall Street Journal poll finds Hispanic voters also evenly split between which party they would support in Congress today. How crucial is this vote for both parties in the upcoming midterm elections?
Let me say this right now live on air, that what will determine whether the Democrats or the Republicans have control of the Senate and the House is bedrocked in the Latino community. And let me explain. In the U.S. Senate, it's tied 50-50, and some of the most crucial races that are up in 2022 are in states with huge Latino populations: Florida, Arizona, and Nevada, just to name three. So Latinos will have a determining factor on who's in the U.S. Senate. And in the House of Representatives, in the last elections, Democrats lost every marginal congressional seats where Latinos made up over 30% of the election. That was in Florida 26, Florida 27, Texas 23, California 39. I can go on because those races kept me up at night trying to figure out why Latinos were overperforming for Republicans. And we found out after doing a post-election survey that Republicans had spent historic amount of money talking to the community and started earlier than they ever had before. And that was a scenario to give them wins in all of those elections.
Well, what are some of the issues that consistently poll high for Latinos?
Always with Latinos, it's about jobs, economy, and providing for their family. In Latino focus groups that we're currently doing across the country, some of the top issues are: what are the party, Democrat or Republican, going to do to make my job or my life better? Gas is going up. Right now, it's currently going down. Bread's been going up. The cost of things overall has went up. They want to know, what are you going to do immediately to help me? It helped Democrats to say that we got everybody vaccinated and that we had relief checks. But now folks want to know, what are you going to do to ease up the pressure that they feel in everyday life? So blue collar, working class issues are issues that resonate with Latinos. Jobs, economy, healthcare, education are normally the top three.
Yeah, were those the same issues that Latino voters cared about in 2020, or do those economic issues, take on or feel more resonant now in 2021?
I'll remind everybody, and that's a great question. In 2020, we were dealing with a pandemic. Everything was about COVID relief. Latinos couldn't go to work, or they were forced to go to work and be unvaccinated because they couldn't get vaccinated, or they were in a mixed status family where somebody was undocumented, so they got no COVID relief. So the COVID epidemic smacked Latinos in the face, unlike almost any other community. So back then, it was all about COVID and getting the economy open. That's why I feel Republicans overperformed in lots of ways, because Republicans were saying, they didn't care about COVID. Let's get everybody back to work. Take your mask off. Let's everybody open up the stores and open up the economy. While Democrats smartly were saying, look, we're still in a pandemic. Let's do this slow. Let's do it right. Let's make sure everybody's vaccinated. And I think that was one of the reasons we found in our research that Republicans overperformed, because Latinos wanted to get the economy back open because they were so desperate to get back to work because they weren't getting any relief from the government in COVID relief checks.
So when you dig into these numbers, it's interesting because you see differences between Latino men and women in terms of how they lean politically. Chuck, what do you think accounts for that?
Well, what we've seen is Latino men performing a lot like non-college educated white men. And the Republicans have made huge gains there. Now, my mama would tell me that we all know that Latinos are just smarter than Latinos, and I'll say that here live on air as a Latino. That's clear. But we also know that women in the Latino household run lots of what's going on, right? Who's going to get the kids to school? Who is the one you talk to? We go to our abuelo, and we find out what's happening with our abuela and what's happening in the world as a whole. So what we've seen is an inroad of these non-college educated issues seeping into a machismo electorate, which is Latino men. And let me be clear, I'm a Latino man who we've just started getting a few more percentages towards the Republican, which is now starting to make a bigger difference.
You know, one last question for you, Chuck, because we had a conversation with James Carville, a Democratic strategist, a few months ago. We talked about the language and the messaging that Democrats were using to talk to various groups. And he mentioned this idea of the Democratic Party using terms like Latinx, for instance, to be a bit more inclusive, while on the one hand, you know, intended to bring a different level of conversation in these kind of political discussions, could feel exclusionary for others. What do you think about that? Has there been too much of an emphasis, you think, on identity politics in the Democratic Party?
I think you can walk and chew gum. I think that when I, as a Latino expert in the boat, when we go out and talk to Latinos, we talk and call them either Latino, Chicano, we call them Hispanics. We use a regional cultural competency to have a conversation with an electorate. We never use the word Latinx when talking to the masses, because the masses of Latinos don't understand that. But when we're in activist groups, where gender neutrality and other things are very important, you want to show respect to the groups of activists that are delivering the vote for you. So we use Latinx when we're in the meetings or in a closed circle of confidants, talking about what that community is, because we want to respect the community of the LGBTQ folks and folks who may be non-gender binding. But you can do that at the same time, while when you send your mail piece out to all the Latinos in New Mexico to know in New Mexico, they call themselves Hispanic.
All right, Chuck Rocha, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.